Hello, everyone, and welcome to our latest On the Floor webinar. Tonight, we're going to be discussing the power of networking at your sign shop and how to improve the process at your shop and, in turn, increase exposure and turn this networking ability into even more jobs. Tonight, I'm going to be speaking with Eric Lazar. Eric is the owner of SpeedPro Chicago Loop. That is a service-disabled, veteran-owned business and a two-time winner of Printing Impressions Project of the Year. His studio has also been named a top 3 sign shop in Chicago for 5 straight years now. SpeedPro Chicago has a very broad client list, and they've partnered with some renowned brands. These include Live Nation, Sam Adams, St. Jude, Allstate, and literally hundreds more. And if you're interested a little bit more about SpeedPro Chicago Loop, they are a large format digital graphic studio that specializes in corporate decor, brand activation, event signage, exhibits and trade show displays, wall, floor, window, and ceiling murals, glass finishes, vehicle wraps, posters and banners, and a whole lot more. Eric is also a former U.S. Marine Corps intelligence analyst. He's also a past president of the SpeedPro Imaging National Franchising Advisory Committee, and he also sits in board and leadership roles for several veteran organizations. What's really amazing to me, and what brought me attention to this particular webinar tonight, is that since his business opened 8 years ago, Eric has yet to make a single cold call. Nearly all of his shop's business is generated via organic referrals. His company is dedicated to being a great corporate citizen, donating products and services to many charitable organizations. Eric and his team are very active networkers and are always willing to make a connection. We've covered several of Eric's shop's projects in the past in our magazine. Eric has actually contributed a few articles for us. In fact, you can find Eric's latest article in our March issue. He talks about how to pack the most production capacity possible in your sign shop's layout. Thank you for joining us today, Eric.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity, Jeff.
No problem, no problem. And before we proceed with this conversation, just a few notes for the attendees out there. First off, stay tuned for the end of this webinar. We'll have a brief survey. We have some questions for you concerning topics that you'd like to see covered in future webinars. Also, during this webinar, there is an Ask a Question button located at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to type in questions as you like. This is a live webinar, and we'll answer them as they proceed. So just that's, just if you have a question, use the Ask a Question button. So let's go ahead and get started, Eric. So let's chat a little bit about your background. You have a vast array of experience, but printing is relatively new as far as careers go. Can you take me through a brief recap of what you did and how you found yourself in the printing industry?
Sure. So I actually went in the Marine Corps right after high school, was an intelligence analyst, Arabic translator, got out, went to college, and then just found a career in television. I was spent about 15 years in broadcast television, managed about 6 stations across the Midwest when I finally left the industry. When I left the industry in 2008, I started a small technology business specializing in SMS, mobile web development, application development. My little business got acquired. The business that acquired us got acquired, and there was another acquisition after that. So it was, in essence, about a 6-year run with mobile technology. The last acquisition was by a venture capitalist who then decided to sunset the mobile division, at which point I found myself going to be out of a job. And I basically had a year to transition out and started looking for a business to buy. So I hired a couple of business brokers. They went through that process of, sort of evaluating what my skill set was, my experience, my level of investment, and the only continuity between all 3 of them was printing. So I dug deeper a little bit, dug deeper into that. And I think the one thing that I was particularly concerned about is the level of investment for a printing business, and so I opted to go with a franchise. And then even within the franchise system, I opted to go with SpeedPro just because I thought it was a little bit more of a niche, and it wasn't just printing, from soup to nuts in terms of small format to large format. SpeedPro focuses on large format, so that's how I found myself here. And it's been we're celebrating our 8-year anniversary come the first week in April, so just a few weeks from now.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You've actually had a pretty good run here. You've racked up a lot of media coverage in the past here. You've also got countless awards, and you even just recently won the International Franchise Association's Franchisee of the Year, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yes, thank you. Uh, yeah, it has been exciting. I don't. I have a business partner, so I certainly can't take all of the credit. My business partner Rebecca is also from television. We've known each other for 21 years. We really took the approach that we were going to take a more agency-esque kind of view of the printing space. When I was sort of doing my initial vetting of printing. I heard a lot of, this is the price per square foot. It was very transactional in nature. And we wanted to make it more personal, but we also wanted to be thought leaders. I had that opportunity to do that in both of my careers previously. And I thought that was going to be important to the voice that we wanted to create in the marketplace and allowing us to get a little bit bigger than sort of just being the local mom and pop print shop. So we've been fortunate. We've stretched ourselves well beyond our comfort level, taking on projects that we probably had no business taking on. And, we've been very fortunate that people have sort of recognized that risk taking approach.
Yeah, congratulations. And that's
Thank
one of
you.
the reasons we're here today, actually. Let's dig down a little bit more into your printing experience and in particular your sales approach, because I kind of find this quite unique here. Like you just said, you started SpeedPro Chicago Loop in 2015. By 2017, you had generated over $750,000 in revenue. And this past year, you were number 11 out of 121 studios. And all of the shops that were in, as well as all the shops which were ahead of you, that were more senior in tenure than you have. But as mentioned earlier, you've never made a single cold call since the day you launched. I'm just kind of curious, like, how is it possible?
Yeah, it's, we didn't start doing this at the very beginning. My business partner and I were really just throwing, noodles against the wall, trying to figure out how we were going to break in. We did not want to make cold calls. We were even adverse to spending money on pay per click. We wanted to develop relationships. We didn't want to be a transactional kind of company. We didn't want to be a commodity. And from all of my years in business development and sales, I knew relationships counted. But where I had worked for a company and that, some of that infrastructure was taken care of, there was certainly a lot more you have to do as a business owner. We were the face of the company. We approached it initially as joining every single chamber and every single networking group. Uh, our schedule was so crazy. Between the two of us, we might have been doing, well over 30 events a week, talking about breakfast, lunches, dinners, and every sort of networking meeting in between, and just meeting a ton of people, which was great. And it built our business relatively quickly. But we pivoted about a year later and mm, gave it a process, a system, a structure, even a philosophy, I would say, which allowed us to do it in, again, in a very structured, very thoughtful manner. And it was really just adopting a new mindset.
Yeah, can you give me a little bit more insight as to what this process looked like and how you go about executing this on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. So initially what we were doing, as I mentioned, we were going to every networking event. And, for those who have gone to these events, it's a lot of salespeople throwing business cards at you and trying to extract something from you. And in many cases, trying to do the same thing is trying to get my business card in front of people. That was, again, that takes you so far, but it's not a thoughtful manner to approach business development. And it's great when you're first starting off. What we did is then we need to develop real relationships, not just seeing these people out for drinks or a lunch. And we looked at those cards and we looked at the people that, okay, who do I like? Who did I feel comfortable with? Who could I have develop? Who would I develop a rapport with, or one-on-one coffees and meeting with them and getting to know them better. And during that process, spend about an hour with the person, and we never focused on what they could do for us, but it was understanding what we could do for them. Never with the thought that we were ever going to try to sell them something. Because again, if you go to these network meetings, it's a lot of salespeople who don't necessarily, pull the strings or have the decision making skill, but they have a lot of connections. And again, it was to develop, we went to it, how do we develop relationships? How do we develop that trust? And we spent about 45 minutes just asking people about themselves and what they needed. Um, as we began to develop these relationships, we would then ask them, do me a favor, give me a 4 to 8 line paragraph on how you'd like me to introduce you. Um, and who are the people that you'd like to meet? And let me take a look at my Rolodex and see who I can connect you with. So one is, we asked people for that information, that I wasn't just making, um, meaningless introductions. Is I want to know who they want to meet, but I also asked them to put a little work into it in terms of providing me, again, just that 4 to 8 line intrograph is what we call them, and then I could facilitate introductions to the people that I knew. Um, and so we use those people that we initially met through these networking things, um, and then we would begin to make introductions on their behalf. So initially we probably had 30 or 40 people. Would make 3 or 4 introductions to people that I know, of the kinds of people that they wanted to meet. And it began to blossom from there, because that seemingly altruistic gesture to help somebody also then creates an obligation on their behalf to make introductions for me. So it has a very interesting way of, they tell two people, they tell two people,
Yeah.
and it built.
Yeah. All right. Sounds good. Sounds good. Can we talk about time commitment scalability a bit here, Eric? Can you only get to a certain point and then it caps out, or is it something that you can continue to build without limits?
You could it they're a little bit of both. When we were going hot and heavy, we had a very structured, uh, again, a very structured schedule. Is I would have a 7 a.m. meeting, 7 a.m. coffee, an 8 a.m. coffee. I would go back to the office between 8:30 and 3, perhaps go out for lunch networking, and then another meeting from 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and then an evening one. So I was meeting about 20 people a week. Um, and that's sustainable to a certain extent. We did it really hot and heavy for about 2 years. Uh, the weekend commitment actually was a lot, because as you begin to meet people, and then you're saying that you're going to make introductions for them, by the time, probably within 6 months or a year, I spent a couple of hours on the weekend making introductions. I was making about 250 introductions every single week for my network. Um, and what we did is we basically aggregated all of these intrographs from all the people that we had met and compiled it into a single Word doc. And after meeting with somebody, if I liked them and I felt comfortable introducing them, I would send them this Word doc and said, of the 600, 1,000 people in this Word document, who would you like to meet? And you could tell me that there are 5 people. You could tell me it's all 1,000 people. And so that was my homework every single week. That was my marketing, was to make introductions. So is it sustainable? It is. It really just depends on what pace. I mean, it's something that we do on a regular basis. I don't maintain that schedule of meeting 20 people a week anymore. But even if I meet 2 or 3 people a week and I'm making some introductions, that generates more introductions for me because again, they're obligated. I tell them who are the kinds of people that I want to meet, and we're getting connected to the people that we need to know.
Okay.
So it's certainly tiring,
Yeah.
but it's a wonderful challenge because you're meeting so many wonderful people through this journey.
Absolutely, absolutely. And a reminder for our audience: you have any questions for Eric? Feel free to use the Ask a Question function down at the below of your screen here, and we'll answer them as they come in. So, getting a little bit back to what you were talking about, Eric, about this networking group you have. So, it's definitely not formalized. This is something that you've done on your own. Yet, from what I understand, you have some very strict guidelines about this group. Can you explain what these guidelines are and how are they regarded by the people that you engage with?
Yeah, so it's not a group by any by any measure. It's people that I've connected with. They're part of my network, uh, but it's there's no requirement to attend. It's not like a BNI. These are people that I indoctrination might be a strong word, but that I've talked to and try to sort of evangelize this philosophy, and that have bought into it because you really, again, it's a mindset, and in order for this to work, um, really sort of the expectations are I will be as generous with my network as you'd like me to be. However, I have the same expectation that you will be as generous with yours, with me and those that I introduce you to. Uh, and that there is a quid pro quo that if you stop making introductions for me, I am not going to be quite as generous with my Rolodex as you'd like, and may stop. Uh, and I think as long as you're clear about those expectations, people appreciate that. Is that they're again. I consider myself a capitalist, but I also believe that this is altruistic. Some of the I guess the best kind of feedback that I get is that was such a wonderful introduction, and I got this as a result. That I just landed a huge deal. I would say that we've probably been responsible for well over 7 figures in business as a result of the introductions that we've made. That's incredibly fulfilling, and it gives us an awful lot of clout in the marketplace as people who can connect, um, and can help facilitate. So the I don't I we haven't really had too much pushback. Then those people that push back, they're not buying in and they're not going to be a part of it. And I'm probably not even going to introduce them, uh, sort of to our way of doing business because you can sort of read that in the first several minutes of a coffee. It's like, are they open to this? Are they going to reject it? So, when I see those signs, I don't even bring this up. It was just simply, hey, Jeff, it was really nice having a coffee with you. If I think of anybody that I can introduce you to, I will. But we don't get deeper into. I don't expose my network to them.
Okay. All right. Gotcha there. And again, to remind our audience, check out Eric's column for us in our latest in our March issue here, Power Pack Print Production, where he talks about really putting the equipment in your shop into the physical space that you have, how to get the most bang for your buck in that area. So let me continue a bit with this networking discussion again with you, Eric. We've spoken a bit about the revenue impact. But are there any other metrics that you've used to track the impact that networking and your relationships have had on your business?
Yeah, I think there's some soft impacts. Is we went from being a vendor to a partner. I think in all honesty, I don't think a lot of people think of printers as the people that are going to help facilitate business for them. Is they're providing a service. It's commodity, it's transactional in many or most cases. So going from a vendor to a partner is, as an influencer in the marketplace, and it gives us greater credibility. Like when you can help develop business for a client or somebody else, it almost creates implicit switching costs of them going to somebody else, is because we're providing a benefit well beyond the price, the service, the quality of what we're doing for them, in that way. We absolutely reduced bid situations because there's a relationship there, and we've minimized the price factor. The relationship is no longer perceived as, it's no longer it's a relationship, and because most of the clients that we've gotten come from referrals, so it people have a different perception of who we are. It's not a sales call. So those are some of the soft impacts. When you get into sort of the harder, more subjective things, we can anticipate that if I meet with 20 people a week, we're going to get probably a 30% return in terms of introductions. So that's 30, that whatever, if I meet with 20 people, I mean, that could be 5-6 introductions a week that I don't have to make cold calls for. The meeting acceptance is usually very high. So we saw, the first 6 months that we implemented this, and really easy to track when we put this in place in 2016, the first 6 months of 2016, we implemented it basically July 5th of 2016, so you could take that year and break it right in half, first 6 months, back 6 months. When we put this process in place, we actually did twice the revenue in the back 6 months as we did in the first 6 months. And as a new business, and it was a 6-figure delta. It was well over $100,000. And we increased revenue 83% from 2017 to 2018. So yeah, there were some really, really, dynamic changes in our business. Beyond that, I mean, what we've seen on the digital side, because it transforms, what it does is, I think we have right now about 6,000 people in our email database. For a small little business, that's actually quite a few people. But the engagement level, because we have relationships with so many of these people, we generally get a 30 to 43% open rate on our emails. I mean, can you imagine on a marketing email getting that kind of open rate with, where the industry average is 16.4%. So we're 2 to 3 times ahead of that. Our click-through rate, where people open the email and they actually click on a link, is as high as 49%. The industry average is a 1.5%. Again, that's because we have relationships with the people that we're talking to. We've published 2,700 posts on social media, 7,000 videos. We have 700,000 impressions across the social media. And 33,000 social media engagements. So that's likes, comments, shares. Again, that's really unusual for a small business, and particularly a printer. But again, that's where this networking and these relationships come by, and the referrals that we get is because people feel connected to us.
Yeah. Again, reminding our audience, if you have questions, there's a ask a question function at the bottom of the screen. Eric is here to answer any questions you might have. I am curious a little bit for myself, Eric, is for other sign shops that are interested in following this system, is there any mistakes you think that can be avoided? Is there anything that they should know about, in terms of implementing the system in place, any kind of mistakes they might make that they should be wary of?
Yeah, absolutely. I think overextending yourself is after about 2 years, Rebecca and I found ourselves sitting in the office almost in tears. We were so tired. We were so exhausted. We had put ourselves out there because, if you're doing 20, you know, 20 meetings a week and, 3, 5, 7 events, that's a lot of time to be on. It's a lot of time away from the family, and you don't have time to decompress. So what I would what I would certainly tell people, because it's something you can, it becomes very addictive when you are when you're the rainmaker for a lot of people, and you're the connector, and people are really are you're being sought after. Um, I mean, I was booked at one point. I couldn't take a referral meeting for about 16 weeks. I was booked that far out,
Wow.
with 20 meetings a week, and there's a lot of pressure. So I would tell people to start off slow, is not try to run that kind of pace. I'd also say you need to be very selective of who you're willing to introduce. Uh, I think an hour is a pretty good time to, when you're looking people in the eyes, you're breaking bread with them, you're having a coffee. Is this somebody that like, trust? Is this somebody that you would feel comfortable making an introduction for? Building a network for the sake of building a network is not the tack that I would take. Is building a quality network certainly is. So, being able to, say no to people. Again, we had very specific rules of the road. One of them being there's no selling. So if we had ever found out that we had made an introduction for somebody and they were trying to pitch, they would automatically be removed.
Hmm.
And so setting those clear expectations, because the last thing you want to do if I'm making an introduction for you, to somebody, is you don't ever want to feel like your guard is up and that you have to protect yourself from a sale. I'm just introducing two really good people. If business comes about organically, that's wonderful. But if again, it's really reinforcing the fact of this mindset, is like you're just going to meet with this person and see what you can do for them. And if you have two people that are sort of indoctrinated in this and they're going like, what can I do for you and what can you it's wonderful. And there's a very good chance that they may wind up doing business together. But if one person's coming at it, as really being the seller, it damages the integrity of the network. So I think being clear with expectations and not being afraid to say no to somebody, like it's over and I'm not making any interest, those are probably the most important factors to this, functioning well.
Okay. All right. Very good advice there. Again, thank you for speaking with us today, Eric. Once again, remind our viewers at the end of this webinar today, we have a brief survey of questions to help us with future topics on that you'd like to see covered in upcoming webinars. And again, any questions from the audience, feel free to send those in. And while we wait for those, is there anything you'd like to say in closing for us tonight, Eric?
Yeah, I think the only thing is this was when we adopted this and we sort of put our philosophy to paper, and we created that system, that process, that structure. It was pivotal and transformative for us. It really changed our business, and it was all the things that we had hoped or that we thought we were,
Mhm.
uh, but we hadn't really crystallized it. And so, yeah, I would encourage people to do it. One, it's a whole heck of a lot of fun. Is you need to look at it with a very industry agnostic approach. Is every meeting is a good meeting, because I don't know who's in your Rolodex, you don't know who's in mine. um, and it's I think people will find that they're going to get exposed to opportunities that they might not have previously ever had the opportunity, because you've got so many relationships built within the community, that you've just got a ton of people rooting for you. And I think that's really been instrumental to our success, is that we have the entire community of Chicago behind us. We've got a lot of people who really care about us because we've done right by them, and so they try to do right by us.
That's great. That's great. You also mentioned earlier. You mentioned about social media engagement and
Yeah,
all the shares and likes and things you've gotten from there and referrals like that. How many people do you have employed at your shop right now?
we have 7.
Okay, so when it comes to social media, do you have somebody there who is actually on your staff that's part of their job is to monitor social media? Or is that something you do? Is that something you guys own to do? How do you interact with people via social media?
Yeah. I would love to have somebody. At one point, we did have an agency that was doing it. We canceled that contract as when COVID hit, and just trying to, one. I think there were 2 reasons. One was money. 2 was the fact that it was very hard to promote yourself on social media, given what was going on with the pandemic across the country. So we went dark for about 2 years. Very few things other than what we were doing that was pandemic related to help the community. After that, I took over. It's probably not the best way for me to be spending my time. And I think we're going to go back to an agency soon. But I do it. It's because I think we also have we have a very unique voice. I think it's not just simply pushing out a project. We are very community oriented. We have a slightly funky way about how we speak, and it's very hard for somebody to necessarily capture that. It's not just here's a vehicle wrap, here's a wall mural. So it's that's something that I've done. But I think we're going to have to transition. It's the only way to continue to scale. Otherwise, it's just that's going to get lost. But it's been successful thus far. But probably not the ideal use of my time.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Thank you again for joining us for our webinar here today, Eric. And with that, I'd like to thank our audience for taking the time to learn a little bit more about this networking process and how it can help them. And I hope you've learned a lot. I hope you learned something from today's webinar to help you be able to increase your customer base, especially through the referral and networking process here. Very impressed with what you're doing, Eric. Definitely with this. And with that, we actually do have a question just come in. Do you have any additional sales and business development?
No, we don't. We never have. That has been the role of both my business partner and myself. And that was one of the reasons that we really wanted to find a structure that didn't require us to do cold calls. It allowed us to do what we like to do, which is just meet people. So, and it's not something that we have on the docket.
Okay. All right. Last call for any questions. If anyone has any questions, I'll give you a few seconds here to submit. And thank you for the previous question. Okay. Well, once again, I'd like to thank our audience for taking the time to learn more about you, Eric, and the networking and referral system you've developed and really had a lot of success with at your shop, at your studio. And with that, I want to thank everyone for viewing today's webinar and attending, and I'll see you next time.